So just to recap, editing a color image, you're trying to get good contrast, and you're also trying to coax out a lot of value range. So if I go up to my levels adjustment layer, you might remember that the old histogram in the original image had very little information over towards the darker side of the image. So now when I look from my mid-grays to my dark grays, I have a lot more information, and you should be able to see that in your color image. So the idea is to do color correction, and in sometimes doing color correction, you might also end up coaxing out more detail. And then if you work with your value range, then those two things combined can give you a nice image that will convert really nicely to a black and white image. So if I look at my original image, it's quite green, and it feels like there's not enough contrast in color. It's just very green and yellow. So my idea when I put on my curves was to coax out a little more blue-green. The levels created a little more contrast, especially in the mid to lower grays or the mid to darker grays. And then I put on just a little touch of hue and saturation in the end because I thought that this was a little yellow, and when I put a little hue and saturation adjustment on it, it felt like it retained a little bit of the greenish hue. So overall, I thought I didn't drastically change the image. All I did was try to coax out a little more detail, some more texture in the fruit, and especially the grayscale, the values. I tried to get a little bit more detail and contrast in the bottom of the image. And it's a good idea to then save that and then do another one. And it's nice to have 2 or 3 versions that you can choose your favorite one. So now I'm ready to convert this color image into black and white. When you convert your image to black and white, you'll notice that any of the adjustment layers that work with color, like hue and saturation or the photo filter, those are not going to be accessible on your adjustment layers. So when I look at my layers, I have a hue and saturation adjustment layer. That will disappear when I convert, but it will keep the levels and the curves because those work and can work specifically with Greyscale. The levels is specifically Greyscale, and the curves you can work with RGB, right? And you can also break down the distinctive channels of color so you can see how the colors are represented in those histograms as well. But you can also work with curves in a black and white image, so that will stay as well. So I'm going to go to my image mode and go to Greyscale, and it tells me it will discard an adjustment layer, and I say, yeah, change modes anyway, and then it's going to discard the color information and the hue and saturation layers adjustment I had. So you'll see now when I double click on my curves, it just has Greyscale. And there's no more color available, but I can still work with my curves adjustment if I want to. So when you convert your imagery, you might see something that you couldn't see in the color image. And in my case, I might look at pulling down the brightness a bit and maybe compensating a little bit of contrast. And after you finish putting your finishing touches on your image, then you can save it. And I'm just going to call this black and white. And I'm going to save it as a PSD to begin with. And that preserves my layers and all of my adjustments that I could go back and edit if I wanted to. And then I would go and save either as a JPEG, or I would go and export for the web. And remember, when you export for the web and you do your 4-up, you can see the quality of your imagery in this. So that's a preferable way to save. And I'm looking at the different compression qualities. So there I went from a 9.85 megabyte image down to 910K, and then we jumped to 250K and to 150K. And I would do the very high quality because it's still a little bit more information, not as much compression. And I would save that. And that would be it. And you're ready to go make a duotone. And we'll do that in the next video.